Hi and welcome. I'm down here in my basement, affectionately known as my wormery because of that corner over there where we've got different worm systems. They're all set up to compost my household waste that can be composted that way. So some of the stuff you see on the table is here to be given to the worms. And it's, stuff like the kitchen scraps you see there in that tray, as well as the coffee, used coffee that's in here. This is crushed eggshell. Crushed eggshell is good mainly as being a source of coarse material that the worms need in their gizzard to break down their food. So we refer to that as grit when we're feeding our worms. And the rest of the stuff, like the leaves in that box and these pieces of newspaper, that coffee filter over there, it's all bedding. All this stuff, that stuff's going to be going into my oldest red wiggler bin. Right up there on the top shelf, that lighter color one on the top shelf in the middle is my 149-day-old red wiggler worm bin. And over the past 24 days, the bin's received no fresh food. So the material's been breaking down really nicely. I checked in there the other day and it was very nice, but a little bit damp, so I had taken off the plastic coverings. I believe that orangish, reddish piece of plastic that you see down there on the table, I believe that's the piece of plastic that was covering it up for a while. But for the past few days, it's been left to air out, hopefully evaporate some of what appears to be a little bit excess moisture in there. But today we're transitioning into the phase that I refer to as horizontal migration. And that just means trying to get the worms to move out of the finished compost into a new section of the bin, built up to try to attract them. And that's what all this stuff here is for, to build up this horizontal migration systems feeding zone and get this bin from its current foraging mode, as I refer to it. Some people call it like a starving stage or whatever. But I'm now transitioning into migration, which is just attempting to get the worms to get out of the compost so they can be relocated to elsewhere, and then the compost can be harvested. So I'm going to move all this stuff aside, make some room here on the bench, put that glove on, and we'll get to work. The one thing I forgot to include earlier, it was just off camera, is my little partition wall that I like to place between the new feeding zone that I just built and the finished castings I'm trying to evacuate the worms from. Obviously, it's not meant to be a barricade. As a matter of fact, it's full of holes to try to enable them to get through as easily as possible, but it's really just meant to help me see where the division line is. But I like to keep the nice, clean, finished casting separate from anything within the feeding area. So let's get to work. The bins are already on the bench here. And let's see, all I need is to find my glove. Oh, okay, there it is. The stick is just something I had placed here to remind me not to feed the bin. Not that I would have forgotten and accidentally fed the bin, but whatever. It was just sitting around. That paper can go right back on at the end when we're done here. I could feel the difference. It's like hard and dry out here on the surface. So I think it was 5 days ago when I came in here last to check on it and to remove the plastic coverings. I was going to come in here either way to stir things up, get this dry stuff submerged and get the more damp stuff down low up near the air, but give all the stuff an equal chance at drying off a little bit. See how nice this material is. There's no one particular place where any feedings would have occurred, so there's not going to be any sort of concentration of worms anywhere, I don't think. I think they're just going to be kind of equally scattered all throughout the material. And I guess, if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that for me, the thorn in my side has been these little chunks of paper everywhere within this material. I just think I ended up with a bad batch. Not bad, but some sort of material that's, I believe, treated with something to help it sort of resist getting broken down too quickly. I'm sure in time it would break down quite nicely, but I really don't want to hang up the completion of this bin and the harvesting of this material, because of a few little paper scraps in my compost. I believe I'm just fine using this as is. Let this paper go with the compost out into the garden. If it takes a while, so be it. It's just paper. And it'll break down. It's just for future reference, for my own reference, but for yours as well. That paper that I had that trouble with was just one particular batch of paper. It was when I tried to recycle an old leaf bag, one that had gotten wet. The side of it tore open, all the leaves fell out of it. Didn't really work well as a bag anymore, but it was a big pile of kind of nice looking brown paper bag-ish paper. Nice thick heavy duty material, so I ran it all through my shredder, had a big bag full of this stuff, and I was using it pretty regularly in most of my bins. But for whatever reason, here is where I seem to see so much of it left over. I'm pretty sure I see it elsewhere in other bins too, but not nearly in the amounts that I see it here in this bin. So as I work this material up to try to kind of aerate it a little bit, it is pretty dense, I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of what I can compare it to, it's almost mud. Yeah, kind of like mud, I guess. I guess it looks like mud. It's got, good kind of thick, heavy sort of feel to it. I'd really like for it to be a little bit more kind of fluid, a little bit more breakaway-ish, more granular. And that's part of the reason I'm airing it out. So it'll remain just covered with that piece of thin paper that we had over here for the past 5 days, and it's just going to continue allowing the top surface to dry off, so the worms are not going to be hanging out there. They'll be down low. But over in the new feeding zone that we established for them, it's going to be nice and damp over there, because we're going to be reusing that plastic. But you might have noticed I folded it into a fairly small piece, so we're only going to create this little terrarium effect section over that, only over that feeding area. Everything else will be left to dry, but over there the moisture will be circulating nicely, so it'll be yet another reason for the worms to be attracted to go hang out over there instead of being the old compost. The old compost where the food's all gone and it's drying out every minute. All right, I think it's all pretty moving around now. I kind of just shoved the whole jumble over just to make sure none of it's still attached to the bottom. I think I've more or less stirred the entire contents at this point. I don't think we need this much room so we can backfill. I just want to make myself a little room so it's easy to work. But look at all those worms. Isn't that fun? Let's just let these guys kind of chill out and enjoy the bright lights. No, I think they're going to start diving right away. Let's give them a moment to just get comfortable. Let's let them all get down into the darkness. So now that these little guys have all burrowed down into the darkness, we don't have to worry about bumping into them while we're working here. All right, so this, as you can imagine, is going to be right here in the middle. Well, not in the middle, but in between the new feeding zone that we're building over here and the finished compost. The worms will have no problem making their way through those holes in there. So, first thing that's going to go in is a whole bunch of this newspaper. I took the time while these worms were getting comfortable in their new space to crumble this stuff up a little bit and give it a little bit of a structure. I've also got some water here because this is pretty dry stuff. I figured let's moisten it all up. Besides, if the worms begin sensing the moisture over here, they're gonna all come over for it. I've already got little puddles and stuff forming on the bottom. That should do. The moisture is also going to be coming out of all these veggies as they start to thaw out. Let's drop all that in here too. Pretty nice range of different types of foods. Little this, little that. There's a cucumber piece or two. There's a tomato piece or two or three. I don't even know what this is. Probably the leaves off of radishes. These really go quick usually, from what I remember, having fed them recently. Potato, mango skins, and they're also going to get some coffee. Let's throw this in here. Well, let's also mix in a little bit of the grit that we bought down here to give them too. They probably don't need it, but whatever. We'll give them some anyway. It's been 18 feedings over here, and I'm sure out of those 18 feedings that made up all this over here, I'm sure many of those feedings included grit. And I don't think the grit stays within the worm system. I think it, you know, does get expelled as they deposit their castings. Got this coffee filter here too. I do like to cover up my feeding zones just so it doesn't really end up being exposed to the air and potentially inviting any unwanted guests to come hang out. So we'll have that one piece of paper covering in this direction, but there was a pretty good sized gap on both sides of it, so I guess I can sort of aid in covering these up with this torn in half piece of coffee filter, covering up sort of over here and over here. Oh yeah, there was one other covering that I wanted to include too. I had a little bit of leafy material left in here. Definitely not a lot, but I figured let's use it up here. The worms will enjoy that. That should become a real tempting spot for the worms to want to come over and hang out in. A lot of fresh leaves, a lot of fresh veggies, a whole bunch of fresh bedding, nice moisture. It's irresistible. Awesome. All right, so I guess here we just want to make sure that we've got our castings running right up against this stuff, even allowing the worms to crawl right over the top if they wanted to. Okay, what do we got here? Something like maybe 3 inches or so. And I always kind of like to level things off if I can, so we'll try to level things off. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Maybe I shouldn't try to mat it all down or pat it all down. Maybe having texture with holes and crevices and stuff like that will give it more surface area, allowing it to dry off and air out a little bit better. So let's do that. Actually, not very damp though. Otherwise, it'll be sticking to my gloves like mud. Definitely damp enough to be sticking to itself in a muddy way, but luckily, you know, luckily not so damp that it's like, you know, fluidish and muddy. So, well, this was all I was after today. I wanted to kind of finish off the foraging phase of this bin and really start into the whole migration of the worms, get them out of this bin, 149-day-old red wiggler bin. So I'll be curious to see how long it takes for the worms to make their way over there. Chances are, before we've got no worms remaining in this compost, it'll probably be one whole excavation of the feeding zone to move one round of worms, and then clearing that out and refreshing the environment so that the remainder of the worms have room to move out too. So usually we kind of hit sort of a capacity. A whole bunch of worms make their way over in the beginning. So we'll do an extraction and probably a second round, and we'll see how long it takes. I believe my record so far has been 18 days. I don't expect to do that sort of time here, but we'll see. I'm curious, you know. Well, that was fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know I did. If you did, please remember to leave me a thumbs up before you go. That would be really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now. There is an item that we forgot to put on here, and it's the plastic covering for the feeding area section of the bin, to try to not only make it tempting from the perspective of it having a whole bunch of food in it and moisture, but also the moisture is going to remain there and recirculating because of that plastic. All right, everyone, once again, thanks for watching. Bye.